Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Please reach out to me directly. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com for pricing. Today, we're discussing an historic piece. This is one of the first 80 FP Journe Tourbillon watches ever constructed. It is the original Tourbillon Remontoir, branded as the Tourbillon Souverain. This is known as a third series watch, and it includes a lot of characteristic features of these early FP Journe watches. Remember, not just the first 80 Tourbillon ever made, the first 80 FP Journe wristwatches of any kind. This is a very early piece for the hardcore Journe collector or collector of independent brands. So it's 38 millimeters in platinum. It's got a yellow gold dial, and as you can see, the watch measures a delightfully slim 9.2 millimeters thick from lug tip to lug tip, 44.8 millimeters with a 20 millimeter spacing between the lugs. Throw the watch on the wrist, and you can see it is quite short across the wrist, being less than 45 millimeters from lug to lug. These lugs are nowhere near the edge of my wrist. It is definitely a unisex option. Take a look at how much clearance I have on each side. A man can wear this, a woman could wear it. It's a timepiece that easily slides underneath the cuff. It's a very versatile watch, and it really harks back to an era when Journe watches were designed to be slim and trim. They've gotten bigger later. This is emblematic of his earlier and original philosophy. Now, taking a quick look at the strap, this is sort of a trivial detail because, as you can see, it is a later FP Journe factory strap of current manufacture, but it is sort of anthracite, large rectangular scale alligator leather, matte monotone stitch, folded edge on the underside. Instead of large rectangular scale, we have small round scale alligator. The advantage to gator on both sides is that it lasts longer. It is more expensive, but when you're talking about a watch worth potentially millions of dollars, it's worth paying an extra $200 to get a double gator strap. Now, it also features curved spring bars, as you can see. The curve of the spring bar allows the lugs to be drilled close to the case without any impediment to its motion. And again, because this is a modern FP Journe strap, it has pull-tab spring bars that allow you to remove the strap without tools. We have a simple FP Journe platinum pin buckle. I'm trying to capture the period maker's marks internally, because we are charting the signs of the times, and you can see a few of them. The very earliest FP Journe wristwatches featured super shallow engraving for all features. Well, with this third series, Tourbillon Remontoir, you could see that it features a case manufacturing year of 2001. This is a mark that would disappear in mid-2005 as they stopped stamping the case with the case year of manufacture. But what's intriguing here is that the name of the brand and the slogan, "He invented and made it," those are deeply engraved, whereas on a much earlier Tourbillon Remontoir, you would find that these are shallow engravings like the reference, the year of manufacture, and then the model name here. You can see this is just as shallow as it was on even earlier Journe watches, but for this generation of Tourbillon Remontoir, the engraving of the name and the slogan get a lot deeper. And I think the reason is by 2001, there were other models in the catalog, which is why the standard features of the case back, because the cases were used universally on many models, the standard features of the case back would be deeply set because they were unchanging, whereas particular information like the model name and the case year of manufacture and the reference T, those would be shallow engraved as they changed from model to model. Now, taking a quick look at the dial, you can see pale yellow gold, matte finished. What marks it as a third series watch? Well, there's a couple of things. You can see that the printing of the power reserve numerals are about the same size as the numerals for the minutes track on the dial. The bolts fixing the dial, the movement, are still large. On a Series 4, they would get a lot smaller. We know this isn't a Series 1 or 2 because the Remontoir cock is flat and black polished rather than rounded across the top. Of course, bolts on the dial side of a watch, an early FP Journe styling decision that was controversial at the time, but almost universally admired and copied widely today. You can see there's a polished blackened steel bezel, and when I say blackened, I mean from certain angles the polish looks black, and that surrounds the stamped brass disc that features the hours and the minutes radially arrayed with a distinctive font used on Journe watches. We have a black polished, that is specular finished, half bridge for the tourbillon. The tourbillon is a filigree wire style cage. It is free sprung and 6-position adjusted, and in a feature rarely seen on Journe watches, Journe equips an overcoil hairspring here. It's a 1-minute tourbillon. It beats away at 21,600 vibrations per hour, and as long as you see this little indicator jumping, you know that the remontoire constant force device is still in action. Now, the power reserve moves backwards, so it indicates 0 when fully wound, just like a marine chronometer would. That is the homage to marine chronometers that Journe builds into many of his watches, and the reason is marine chronometers had to be wound exactly 24 hours apart, so you needed to know how many hours since the last winding, not how many hours it would continue to run. So when this indicates 0, that means 0 hours since a full winding. What you want to do is wind it at least every 28 hours to keep the remontoire system operating, because it's disabled after 28 hours to keep the watch in operation, but you lose the constant force device. You can see on the reverse side there's a linear spring. There's a secondary escapement under there that ensures for the first 28 hours the barrel never directly drives the escapement. The result is that for 28 hours the balance, or I should say the escapement, receives constant force, which allows the balance to receive constant force, which allows the balance to maintain constant amplitude, which allows the watch to be regulated very precisely. Journe himself has said that features such as the remontoire, the overcoil hairspring, the free-sprung architecture, and the 6-position adjustment deserve more credit for the accuracy of the watch than the tourbillon, which he states is attractive and historically important, but mostly for aesthetics. Now, on the reverse side, you could see that disparity, the deep, shallow duality of engraving, the now discontinued 38mm case in a discontinued model with the discontinued year of manufacture stamping on the back, or I should say engraving, with the discontinued double hallmarks, because from 1983 to mid-2008, Journe always bought his cases from Eleanor, a Paris metropolitan area French case maker, which is why you see both the Swiss hallmark and the French hallmarks on the same case. It's also why you see the Eleanor maker's marks. That's a discontinued case type. In mid-2004, this watch would be redesigned, no longer widely called the Tourbillon Remontoire. The post-2004 watches were always called the proper name of the model line, which was Tourbillon Souverain. Now, that watch would have featured a rose gold movement, but from 1999 to mid-2004, the standard Tourbillon Remontoire series featured these brass movements. They're obviously rhodium plated to give them that silver sheen, but they are brass calibers, and this era of Journe movement is more sought by collectors for its rarity. I'll also say that it's nice to see the relative crudity of some of the finish, especially around the tourbillon cage structure. It's imperfect. That's not because they weren't as well made, it's because they were more handmade in these days than later on when Journe scaled up production. So you see more marks indicating human beings assembled this. In some regards, that actually means some features, such as the click and the click spring, are better finished than later movements. And of course, this is caliber 1498-14 for the size in French lean. Multiply that by about 2.24 to get the size in millimeters. And then 98 is the year FP Journe started work on this 25 jewel movement. So 1498, that's where the nomenclature comes from. You can see the watch has been subsequently serviced to Journe, as it features Holt head screws in the case back, so I just want to point that out. If you're wondering why those are there, it's because this watch has been back to Journe at some point since its original manufacture, and though originally 30 meters water resistant, I strongly encourage you not to take the chance. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.